Hi, all. As we move into our fourth session in the Designing Trusted Data Products breakout track, it is my privilege to welcome yet another seasoned leader to the Impact stage. We're spoiled today. With nearly a decade leading data teams at Credit Karma, our speaker's latest undertaking is one that's particularly relevant in this season in the data industry. Here today is Vice President of Engineering Vishnu Ram to share his team's vision for building reliable generative AI experiences with data observability. Vishnu, it's such a pleasure to have you.
Thanks a lot, Sydney, for inviting me over to talk to this audience, and really looking forward to this.
Us too. Take it away.
First of all, I really want to apologize for the clickbaity title that I put on the deck. And I was just trying to compete with some of the other speakers who have great talks going on as part of this conference. Saying that, I'm hoping to do justice to that. As Sydney already introduced me, I lead engineering at Intuit Credit Karma. This is my 10th year at Credit Karma. I joined in 2014. I was looking up earlier when the deep learning revolution started with AlexNet, and I believe I was very close to joining right at the time frame. And I've been a big part of working at Credit Karma with my teams to be able to get a lot of benefits through all the revolution through machine learning and deep learning. And I'm looking forward to doing more with generative AI at Credit Karma. Just to introduce Credit Karma a little bit more, Intuit Credit Karma, we have been like a mission-driven company. This is the longest I've been ever in any company in my entire career, and it's because of the mission-driven aspect of how Credit Karma operates. We have more than 130 million members across US, Canada, and UK. We are best known for credit scores, but a lot of members come to Credit Karma to be able to get support with whatever financial goals that they are looking at, including identity monitoring, shopping for insurance, shopping for loans, tracking their net worth. We've also, over the last few years, brought in offerings for savings account and checkings account, which are offered through our banking partner, MVB Bank. What's there for my talk today? So I wanted to kind of walk through the journey that I've had in terms of data quality and discoverability challenges as Credit Karma has scaled, and talk a little bit about how Monte Carlo has really helped us over the last couple of years in dealing with these challenges. And then I just want to introduce where we are with building generative AI experiences at Credit Karma, and where does reliable data play a role in that. And I'm hoping how Monte Carlo and other the ecosystem of the modern data stack can help us deal with some of the challenges I see coming along the way. Just to introduce a little bit about how Credit Karma scaled, how our ecosystem has scaled, I'm going to present it in the form of ecosystem scaling as well as impact scaling. Ecosystem scaling in my head is from 2014 to 2019, we added 70 million users. And as you can imagine, that's a lot of growth that we had to deal with over those years. And we really had to lean in on technology, building out our technology, building out our platform to be able to deal with this kind of scale. We didn't start out, when we started out in 2014, we already had 25 to 30 million users. So it's not like we started with zero and then added 70 million. So we already knew how to deliver strong user experiences. We were already operating very well as a business. It's more about how can we bring technology to the table to help all the users that we are adding to the business. From 2017 to today, we've also doubled our employee headcount. And when I say doubled our employee headcount, there were a lot of functions which we did not have in place, which we did not have fully staffed out in that time frame, 2014 to 2017. And then we started putting together those functions. And as we started putting together those functions, Credit Karma historically has always been a company which has used data to deliver value to our members. And all these functions that we added between 2017 and today, all of them came in with the mindset that we are going to use data to improve the business. We're going to use data to improve our members' lives. So when you go through that process, as someone who owns engineering for this area, I needed to make sure, and my teams needed to make sure that we are supporting all of this ecosystem growth really well. When you have that kind of ecosystem growth happening, you really need to be able to invest in technologies. And investing technologies means putting together engineering teams which are supporting different aspects of data. And to be able to do that, we needed to show impact. And just giving a little bit of a glimpse of how we impacted the company, between 2018 and today, we grew from 8 billion model predictions a day to 65 billion model predictions a day. The first time I asked one of my team members for this number in 2018, and then he came up with this number, I was not looking at it from a daily perspective. When I looked at it from a daily perspective, it was really shocking to me that we were operating at that kind of scale. Now, all of these model predictions helps our members get the best recommendations in terms of financial products that they wanted and they needed and they have access to in the market. I always talk a little bit about the importance of making sure that we surface the right financial products to our members. I remember coming to the country a long time back. I'm not going to age myself here. When I came to the country, I came in for a grad school, and then I saw a bunch of t-shirts stalls which are giving out free t-shirts if you just apply for credit cards. And the first few months, I had so many dings on my credit report because of all those t-shirt driven declines for credit cards that I was applying to. So when we do these model predictions, what we are really helping do is we are helping our members get the best possible financial products that they are eligible to get so that they don't get dinged like I got dinged all those years back. Similarly, correspondingly, we also had a lot of training data growth to be able to support our data science teams so that they can go build all these models. What does this mean in terms of needs for the engineering teams and for the platforms that we were building? The ecosystem scale, the needs for ecosystem was like everyone wanted to use data because they could see some teams getting a lot of benefits by using the data and delivering a lot of wins using the data. So everyone wanted to use the data. The kind of data, the volume, variety of data that we were getting across different business verticals just kept changing and growing, and we needed to deal with all of that. Some of this is probably like very familiar to others also in the same situation that we are in. What we also found was there were differing levels of data awareness and skills. Everyone wanted to use data to deliver value, but there are only so many people who came in with like a data engineering background or a data science background or an analyst background or a business intelligence background. So when everyone wanted to start using data to deliver business benefits and member benefits, we wanted to make sure that we are building a safety net that allowed them to do the things that they wanted to do. From an impact perspective, we were creating a lot of value. All these teams were creating a lot of value from a business perspective, which meant that we needed to ensure that they can rely on the systems, they can rely on the data so that the value that they are delivering is not like transient, right? Like today is, it's delivering a lot of value and tomorrow something bad happens and then that value goes down to zero. We didn't want to be in that position. Correspondingly, we have also had to spend a lot of money on cloud, and we wanted to make sure that we are able to manage that better and be as efficient as possible. Doing all of this, along all of this, we also needed to do a better job in helping our stakeholders understand why are we spending all this money on cloud? What is the value that all this data is helping us deliver? We needed to go to that as well. So stakeholder transparency also started becoming really important for us. To give you a feel for how we were thinking about data usage at Credit Karma. So one, we needed to collect all the data. So a lot of our users or members come to Credit Karma because they want to see what is on their credit report. They wanted to see their credit score. Now, it's really important when you collect all this data, we get this data from the bureaus, we are able to secure this and we are able to present it in a way that the users can make the decisions for their lives as they need it. We use all this data to be able to make good decisions as an organization, as teams, so that we are building the right products which are providing value for our members. And I already talked a little bit about providing the best financial offer recommendations, and that's where like all the recommendation systems and machine learning teams that I actually manage within Credit Karma, they provided a lot of value there. And then I talked a little bit about the protect and optimize piece. So this is where we were, like I would say, since like the beginning of the year, we invested a lot. But I already talked a little bit about the needs. And one of the big gaps that from a protect and optimize perspective was we had different teams operating in their own silos, trying to protect the value that we were creating. And that's really where I got introduced to Monte Carlo, and we brought in Monte Carlo. And from the beginning, my big thing was I wanted a system in place that would allow us to operate with like one system in a consistent way that just allows us to know when things are going bad. How can we protect our teams? How can we protect teams which different levels of skills, data skills, to be able to understand where they needed to, how can they protect the value that they were creating. So I'm glad to say that over the last couple of years, with a lot of support from the Monte Carlo team, we've 136 users across the company. And just like, think about it, that's a big deal for me. And I started out like we had like 3 or 4 teams trying to look at data. And then when an incident happens, those 3 or 4 teams will always get pinged, and then they have to go and figure out like what went wrong and how to fix it. But now with all these users coming and using Monte Carlo across 38 domains and setting up all of these monitors, right? So it's a lot of monitors. I haven't compared notes with like the Monte Carlo team, like whether like other clients or other customers are using Monte Carlo as us. But I was really proud of how much work that we've been able to do here. And this is more an indication of the value that we are creating with data. If we were not creating the value with data, people would not be spending time on protecting what they're protecting as of now. Okay, moving into GenAI. So till like 22, I would say we did a lot with machine learning. We did a lot with recommender systems. We use data a lot in our member experiences. But it's more like on the left-hand side, right? So on the left-hand side, you see this master chef who really understand the skills, the techniques, the ingredients, who understands his target market really well, and then handcrafting the menu, handcrafting what gets served in their restaurant. That's where we were operating. And 2023, what has happened is like with bringing in generative AI, we are getting into a mode where the users are coming in and we are trying to help the users use the technology to come up with their own menu, come up with their own solution to the problems that they care about. The problem that the master chef was solving is like, I want an amazing Italian cuisine. I want an amazing dinner. I want to take my family out and have this amazing dinner. But I don't know what the problems are going to be. I just want to make sure on the right-hand side. Now, this ends up creating a lot of challenges for a lot of teams. How do you build reliable GenAI experiences? And I think there's a big role for data. I'm going to talk for this and this slide and next slide a little bit about the role of data there. We want to use data to make sure that we operate in a fintech space, which is a highly regulated space. We want to safeguard against bias and protect our attributes. We can't have someone coming in and facing bias through the experiences that we build. If we just allow the LLM to do on its own, we don't have the guarantees. So we need to be able to build the guarantees to be able to build reliable GenAI experiences. We need to make sure that the model is not hallucinating and coming up with like, I remember one of my team members at one point of time, they just went to ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT, what is Vishnu's credit score? And then ChatGPT said 800. Just like randomly just gave some number. We don't want those kind of things happening. We want to make sure if someone is asking for their credit score, first of all, I can't ask for your credit score. I can ask only for my credit score. We want the LLM to respond back using the data that is there rather than coming up with things on its own. We want to be able to, I already talked a little bit about how we use recommender systems to come up with the best possible financial products. We want to make sure that the LLM is like delegating some of this work to the recommender systems, and all the data that we use there to build really high quality recommendations is continuing to be relied on there. And we also want to understand what is the value that we're creating for the members through their interactions with the language model. To look at it in a different way, there is a lot of things that we use data today in Credit Karma to be able to build out these GenAI experiences. We've talked about like what kind of GenAI experiences and what use cases that we have out there in other public forums. I'm not going to get into it a lot, given what we are trying to do here. But we use data to, I already said, like if I'm interested in knowing my credit score, I ask that question, I want my credit score back. And that's data. So the user experience where the user wants to understand where they are and what they want, what data that they want to look at. This is essentially like what is the data that is visible to the member. And it's really critical for us to get it right. We also want to use data to help our members get into the right kind of experiences. And this is where targeting comes in. This is like, I am interested in buying a home. And if I'm interested in buying a home, then I'm interested in getting into conversations to get support from our financial assistant to understand what goes into buying a home. Now, if I'm not interested in buying a home, I don't want to see those insights. I want to be able to just go deal with it myself, deal with other things that I care more about. Behind the scenes, we also want to make it more convenient for the user in a way where the user can ask targeted questions to the LLM that would allow the LLM to answer in a smart manner. Like if the LLM doesn't know that my income is such and such, and if my credit score is such and such, it's not going to be able to come up with the right answers given my situation that I'm in. We also needed to collect a lot of system performance logs to understand how is this performing? How can we monitor whether we are helping the user? Are we using the right voice and tone so that the user can get the best benefit from the systems that we are building? We also needed, like with conversations, which are all more qualitative in nature, we want to understand if I change the prompt, how do things change? If I move from 3.5, GPT 3.5 to Llama 2, how do things work? And we also wanted to make sure that we are able to evaluate when we add more data sources into RAG, is that going to help us or not? So this is all, these are all things that data is helping us in solving for. I'm going to wrap up by talking about some problems that we are learning about and we're figuring out like how to deal with. And I think data observability and the ecosystem of tools is going to play an important role in helping solve for that. We are getting into a place where there is a lot of rich, unstructured data that is coming in. It's like some of that is also very sparse, some of that is very transient. For example, I am looking to buy a car to replace my 10-year-old Honda Odyssey. Now, once I buy that car, it's probably a thing that I'm going to think about like for a month, and after that, it's done. So I want to make sure that I'm not, the LLM is not thinking about me replacing the car forever. So that's like rich, unstructured data. We need to understand where the data that the LLM uses is coming from. We need to be able to look at when data gets converted into embeddings, and those embeddings get converted into like some rich text that the LLM is putting in front of the user. What's the source? How did the LLM decide to put this in front of the users? So we really need more investments from a lineage perspective where you're going from data to embeddings to rich text that you're putting in front of the user. We are really, really early in our understanding of how we are moving from using data to doing controlled probabilistic outcomes. When I talk about using machine learning for most of our journey till 2022, these are all controlled probabilistic outcomes that we were able to deal with it like a master chef would deal with. But now we are moving into like more of an LLM plus user-driven probabilistic outcomes. The user comes with a problem. The user says, this is my problem. I need help from you. And then we are figuring out how to help the user. When you build those kind of experiences, how do we deal with that? How can we deal with that? So I want to wrap up by saying that I really enjoyed putting together this for all of you, and I'd love to get into conversations, and it would be great to get into some Q&A now.
Great. Thank you so much, Vishnu. We actually had quite a few questions come through, so we've got a few minutes to spare. Would love to hear you expand a little bit. So starting off with the question we have here from Stevie, I believe, is, can you discuss how you ensure data observability in a distributed system environment? Like, are there any specific challenges associated with using microservice architecture, like those orchestrated with Kubernetes in relation to GenAI?
Yeah, I think we need to understand what role data has to play in across various systems. And we want to make sure that each system owner is able to think about observability of inputs that is going into their system and observability of outputs of their system. That's the only way that I think you can really be confident about. Each system owner needs to invest effort in making sure that they have good quality inputs coming in and good quality outputs going out. That's the only way I feel like distributed teams and microservices are going to work.
Great. And then do you believe that adding data observability would be a good strategy in reducing hallucinations in Gen AI? It's all about the hallucinations, you know? We're clicking for you.
Yeah, I don't think we have any choice. We need to be able to observe the data that is, again, it's like my previous answer holds here as well, right? Like, you want to understand what data that you're putting into the LLM. And if the LLM is coming up with its own thing, you need to know, I did not provide this as an input to the LLM. So the LLM is coming up with its own thing. Then you need to figure out like how to deal with that situation. If you don't have observability of what goes into the LLM and what comes out of the LLM, you're screwed.
Right. And this kind of piggybacks on that. Do you plan to use GenAI to handle sensitive data like PII? I think that obviously we don't want hallucinations and LLMs making up their own things when it comes to sensitive data. So what's your thought on that?
I think this is a question that is like your legal team and security team needs to answer and understand like what is the level of security that you want, and whether the security that the LLM provider is giving you, are you hosting it internally? Are you hosting it externally? Do you have control over where the data goes to? Do you don't have control over? A lot of considerations that goes into deciding it. And thankfully, I have support from my security team and legal team to help us make these decisions. I don't need to make those decisions.
That's great. Great answer. And last question for you today before we wrap up. How does Credit Karma manage data lineage and observability in a highly scalable environment? So kind of ensuring users can trust and understand the data that they're working with.
It's a hard problem. And for us, the big problem was the term lineage probably only came to the light in the last few years. And before that, we could all know that there are some issues going on and we don't know how to fix it, or we know how to fix it and people would come up with solutions. I think it starts out by defining your data assets really well. And some of it comes down to like, if you already have like a good service registry, then you can start thinking about like both online versus offline. I feel like a lot of teams do a good job of dealing with online services well. They do a poor job of data pipelines and offline data, and like being able to register where is your data, what is your data, where are your assets, and what are your assets. I would suggest that you start with a registry before you go try to do more with lineages. Lineage is essentially a graph. Unless you understand what are the nodes that go into the graph, you don't really have a chance, right? I think you need to start with like, what are the nodes that go into the graph? Define that really well. At least start by defining it at a very high. Don't go try to do it like too granular very early. At least define it at a very high level. You can get a lot of benefits from doing something like lineage if you just like find like the top 10 value creators from data and then go from there.
Wow, that's great. Thank you so much, Vishnu. That's all we have time for today. It's not easy to find kind of like a real world example of data leaders doing AI well. So it's been honestly a really a privilege to have you join us today.